G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to react to a video about roundabouts, and I know it sounds like such a strange topic. They're so common over here in Australia, but in the States, they're not that common. Yes, you do find some of them, but typically roundabouts just aren't a popular thing over in the States. In the entire city of Philadelphia, which is huge, I think there's 2 roundabouts that I could think of. Meanwhile, if Mark and I are going to the shops, I can think of 4 roundabouts that we go through just to get down to the shops, like 5 minutes from our house. So roundabouts are very common over here in Australia compared to things like 4-way stop signs and whatnot over in the States. Roundabouts do tend to be a little bit safer too, but today I wanted to look into why the US has fewer roundabouts, why apparently the US hates roundabouts. So here we have a video from Cheddar, why the US hates roundabouts. So grab a Becky, grab a cuppa, and let's react to this video.
Carmel, Indiana is home to an unusual record. The city of 97,000 people north of Indianapolis boasts over 125 modern roundabouts, more than any other US city, and they're proud of it. This number accounts for 3% of the country's 4,000 total roundabouts.
It's so weird when you think about the population difference and just how densely populated the US is compared to Australia. There's only 4,000 roundabouts in the entire country of America, where you have a country of about 380 million people. And here in Australia, you have a country of about 26 million people. Meanwhile, from what I can tell from a super quick Google search, there's about 8,000 roundabouts in Australia. And you figure there's only a few major cities in Australia and the population is so much smaller. So just the fact that you guys have double the roundabouts here compared to what we had over in the States is kind of bizarre. Why is it that America does not want to use roundabouts?
But compared to other countries, the US is not holding any records. France has the most roundabouts with over 30,000 constructed across the country. It is followed closely by the United Kingdom with 25,000 roundabouts. So how did one small Midwestern city become the roundabout capital of the US? The reason can be credited to Mayor Jim Brainerd. During his graduate school trip to England, he observed the ease and safety of the country's numerous roundabouts. Drivers were yielding to traffic and to bikes and to pedestrians. No unsightly traffic signals and no long lines or congestion. It made me wonder why the US had not built more roundabouts. When Brainerd was elected mayor of Carmel in 1996, he made it his mission to cover the city with roundabouts. But an ease in traffic congestion was not the only reason behind his campaign. In fact, the roundabout is the intersection of choice for many modernized countries because of its proven safety. Carmel, Indiana alone has seen a reduction in the number of injuries from car accidents by about 80% since the 1990s. So if roundabouts are increasing safety for drivers, why is America lagging behind?
Okay, so I haven't seen any more of this video yet, but part of me just right off the bat thinks it would cost so much money to have this done. It would cost so much to basically pull up a lot of infrastructure that's already there that, yes, even though it's not as safe as the roundabout options, it still works. Roundabouts can be safer as long as people know how to actually drive around them and use them. I remember once Mark and I were on his motorbike about to go around, and this elderly woman was in a roundabout coming around, and she saw us and she just slammed on her brakes in the middle of a roundabout. You do not do that. We were supposed to give way to her, but for some reason she saw a motorbike, even though we were on the side street, we weren't even in the roundabout yet, and she just panicked. So you need to be comfortable riding around in roundabouts. You need to learn how to ride around in them. And these are so new in the US. I can't imagine it would be easy taking even a small city and have them convert to more roundabouts and fewer 4-way or even 3-way stop signs.
I hate them. They're the worst things ever.
Just Americans like me hate it and don't think they're necessary. I think that it's taking a long time and I'm scared I'm gonna miss the exit I need, and so I end up going maybe 2 or 3 times more than I need to.
There are over 300,000 existing signalized intersections in the United States. According to the Federal Highway Administration, more than 50% of the combined total of fatal and injury crashes occur at or near these intersections.
I used to work in a law firm where all we had were car accidents. That was all we dealt with. We were like defending people in these car accidents. And so many accidents happen, not just rear ends at red lights, but four-way intersections because somebody blew a stop sign, or somebody claimed they couldn't see the stop sign from where they were at, or there was something blocking a stop sign from being viewed easily. So I'm not surprised at all that so many accidents, more than 50% of accidents, happen at or near a traffic light. And I don't even think that included stop signs. I think that was just traffic lights.
On average, over 10,000 people are killed each year in collisions at them. Yet, studies show that modern roundabouts reduce accidents by 38% and fatal crashes up to 90%. So why does the collision rate drastically drop?
That's a huge difference. I never would have thought it would be that much. I thought it would have been like maybe 40% fewer people were killed in these types of accidents. That's insane that the number is that high. 90%, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. It's unbelievable. So I haven't seen any traffic accidents at roundabouts over here in Australia. I have seen so many accidents over in the States at intersections, stop signs, and traffic lights. So if it reduces it by that much, why has the US not adopted this?
Well, the answer lies in the construction. A roundabout is a small one-way circular intersection built around a raised center island. Drivers must yield to circulating traffic as they enter and exit at their desired street. Because drivers are forced to slow down upon entry, the collision rate drops. They are no longer racing to beat the red light. Even if an accident occurs, injuries are less likely due to the lower speeds. Take note though, this is the definition specifically for what is called the modern roundabout. This is because the modern roundabout is often confused with the similar intersections known as traffic circles or rotaries. Unlike modern roundabouts, traffic circles are much larger in shape. Drivers enter traffic circles in a straight line at faster speeds, and they're not required to yield to oncoming traffic. In modern roundabouts, drivers navigate a gentle curve at a slower pace. Traffic circles often use stoplights or stop signs within the circular intersection.
Okay, so now that I'm thinking about the roundabouts that I was thinking of in Philly aren't even roundabouts then. I guess they're traffic circles because they are huge. There's stoplights in between them. So what I thought was a roundabout, even back home, I guess isn't a roundabout.
This is Columbus Circle in New York City. Built in 1905, it's considered to be the world's first traffic circle. Following its construction, large traffic circles began spreading around the United States. But because their layout enabled high-speed merging and weaving, they caused more vehicle collisions and they quickly fell out of favor.
Big issue with these circles was safety. The fact that cars had to suddenly be stopped in the middle of it while everyone's coming in at speed, and that's scary.
That's Gordon Meth, a civil engineer.
And not all our cars perform as fast as others, then they would get congested. Those were the reasons why circles fell out of fashion, and a lot of government agencies went around trying to get rid of circles.
By the 1950s, development slowed to a halt worldwide. Fast forward to 1966. A city engineer named Frank Blackmore of the United Kingdom wanted to rectify the problems caused by traffic circles. So, he developed what is now known as the modern roundabout. Blackmore established the give-way rule for his modern roundabouts, which required entering drivers to yield to circulating traffic. This created a much safer intersection than the original traffic circles. The idea quickly gained favor, and the modern roundabout began spreading throughout parts of Europe.
So I know vehicles, like cars that we think of today, are still a pretty new concept, but I'm surprised that this wasn't thought up of until 1966. I would have thought that this was something back in like the 20s and the 30s. So for this to be such, it's still a pretty modern concept. You figure it's only about 60-ish years old. That's really surprising. And you figure a lot of infrastructure is built pre-60s, especially over in the States, especially in the bigger cities. So I can only imagine how much it would cost just to put one roundabout in at a four-way intersection. So imagining doing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of these across the US, the cost would be astronomical. I have no idea how in the world it would be feasible to change intersections like this these days. And compared to a four-way intersection, like a four-way stop sign, roundabouts seem like they take up so much more space too. So I don't know how functional that would be in this day and age. Like, I'm thinking of Philly where I grew up. So a lot of the streets are a little bit small, they're more compact because it's an older city. People weren't thinking of cars and whatnot when they were building homes back in the 17 and 1800s. So the roads that are put in tend to be a little bit smaller. There are still a lot of streets where you can only park on one side of the street because there's no room to park cars on both sides. So I don't know where they would put roundabouts in some of those really, really tight areas like that.
The changes Blackmore made were successful, and over time, accident rates dropped drastically. But the trend was not catching on in the United States. Engineers weren't convinced that the improvements Blackmore enacted were safer for drivers, and Americans still had a largely unpopular opinion about them. So American engineer Leif Arston set out to change that. In 1984, Arston reached out to Blackmore for help. In 1941, Sir Winston Churchill asked America to join Britain in a struggle to protect democracy. We join you, and together we triumphed. Now, 45 years later, I am calling upon you to help me with the difficult struggle in which we are both engaged. We are trying to bring the British-style roundabout to the Western Hemisphere. The fighting is tough, the slogging is slow, and the resistance is stiff. In the spirit of Anglo-American cooperation, will you join us and lend a hand? Blackmore quickly agreed to a meeting with Arston and traveled to the United States. Together, the two set out around the state of California, persuading traffic heads to begin building modern roundabouts. However, the public was not convinced. Surveys showed only 20% of drivers approved of their construction. Even if project proposals for roundabouts were approved, the two men were often met with protest, and the plans were quickly shut down.
I feel like there's something in the American mindset where we really don't like change. If something's working, at least, we don't want to change it. We're comfortable with it. And it's one thing if it's a completely new concept, but a lot of Americans don't like the idea of taking something that another country has done and adapting it and using it there. It really ruffles a lot of Americans' feathers, so to speak, when you're talking about things that maybe are a little bit more political than roundabouts, and people start talking about other countries, about places like Sweden and Switzerland and Australia and New Zealand. A lot of Americans are very, very anti taking what other countries do and adapting it and bringing it to America. For them, if something works, they don't want to change it. Even if there's something that's a better option, something that would be more safe, they're comfortable with what they have. They don't want to learn something new. They don't want to have to adapt and adjust and change their current ways, especially if it means adopting a style, even something like a roundabout in the roads, that another country has already done.
Finally, in 1990, Arston and Blackmore's hard work paid off, and the first two modern roundabouts were successfully constructed in a Las Vegas subdivision. The feat caught the attention of city planners. Other communities followed in their footsteps, and roundabouts slowly began popping up around the U.S. Although construction started later in the U.S., the timeline of events is not an exclusive explanation for the lack of roundabouts. In fact, there are a few theories that could account for the answer. First, the American detestation for roundabouts could derive from what is called the Availability Heuristic. This term describes the way people form an opinion on something based on the immediate thoughts or memories that are associated with it. The scene of Clark Griswold getting trapped while driving in a traffic circle and European Vacation.
Does anyone remember that movie? Because you could definitely see a lot of Americans getting stuck in that sort of roundabout loop. To be honest, even though I've been through them, I haven't driven in a car around one. I haven't ridden a bike around one. So I could see myself being that American that kind of gets caught in a loop a couple times until I find my way out of it, particularly at like a busy intersection. So I could see why a lot of Americans would be hesitant about going around a roundabout, especially if they never experienced one, if they've never ridden around one, if they've never really seen one in real life.
Come to mind.
It's amazing. I cannot get left. There's Big Ben, kids. Parliament.
Or perhaps the time Homer Simpson drives hopelessly around the Lambeth Bridge roundabout before swerving out in a desperate attempt to escape the never-ending nightmare.
Keep turning, keep turning, keep turning, keep turning.
I see an opening.
No, it's...
Only to crash into the Queen of England herself.
That's it. I'm acting the way America acts best. Unilaterally.
When thinking about modern roundabouts, many Americans tend to envision traffic circles. This is an easy misconception because the two appear similar at first glance. Ever since the fallout of the original traffic circle that enabled high collision rates in the early 1900s, Americans were left with a bad taste in their mouths. So, the assumption that modern roundabouts will be just as dangerous is formed. Plus, American drivers might simply just be used to traffic lights.
We're just used to intersections and traffic signals historically. I've found that the public sometimes don't like four-way stops where everyone has to stop and yield. They just don't like them because they just get, if there's a lot of traffic, they get kind of confused. I think you get the same effect at a roundabout. You know, the uncertainty level gets to people. There's something comforting, I think, to the red, yellow, green that tells you it's time to go or not go.
I could definitely see that being a reason why Americans don't like the idea of adopting a roundabout, something that doesn't have like a distinct light to it, a distinct traffic signal, something where you kind of have to rely on your judgment and looking around at the people around you, looking around at the traffic that's in the roundabout before you go in, before you go out. I think people are a lot more comfortable over in the States with just the red, yellow, green, and then obviously you have turning lanes for the bigger lanes, so traffic lights for turning lanes as well. It really just comes down to what people are used to, what people are comfortable with. So I can see a lot of Americans being really, really hesitant at the idea of having to learn something new when what they already have, even if it's not the best system out there, it at least works.
They are comfortable with a binary system that controls their actions and makes decisions for them. Red light stop, green light go. Simple enough, right? In a sense, drivers care more about the illusion of safety created by stoplights. But when they are forced to rely on their own driving abilities, along with the actions of others, it causes a confusing and distressing experience. Another theory could be that Americans just don't know how to use a roundabout.
There are certain parts of the country where they're starting to gain favor, but the reality is that people aren't used to it. You come up to this intersection, this circle, and it tells you to yield, but you're not totally sure how to use it, and you're not used to the concept of going around in a circle to find your exit. So it's a matter of just people getting comfortable with it and used to it. And that comes with critical mass. The more of them there are, the better. So I think that's what the main reluctance is.
Many states don't even require teenagers to navigate one during the road skills driver's exam to obtain their licenses.
I know roundabouts weren't a thing whatsoever when I got my driver's license over in the States. I was 21 when I got my license. Not comfortable driving a car, not comfortable riding a bike. So this wasn't something that you had in driver's licenses. It wasn't something that you had to learn in the little books that you had to study before you can get your learner's permit, which is equivalent to L plates over here in Australia. That wasn't something we had to learn. It wasn't something we needed to know.
Even in the turn section on the Virginia State Driver's Evaluation, the roundabout portion reads only, if available. American drivers end up learning how to drive through a roundabout during their first real-world encounter with them. This can cause a stressful experience due to the lack of familiarity. Therefore, the disdain for the experience is established. Lastly, it comes down to awareness.
So you do have to be really, really aware of your surroundings. You should be aware of your surroundings when you're driving anyway. That's the reality of it. but you do need this extra level of awareness when you're going into a roundabout compared to something like a traffic light. You have red stop, green go, but if you come up to a roundabout, you have to pay attention to the cars around you, make judgment calls about when people are going to start going in and out of these roundabouts, when people are going to start joining in on other streets. I mean, it's a little bit confusing, even for something that I know seems so simple to a lot of Aussies because they've grown up with it here. It's something that's so foreign and alien and bizarre to Americans. So it's not something that they would be comfortable with, and having that extra awareness, even though you should be aware of your surroundings when you're driving at all times, having to have that extra bit of alertness can really make people uncomfortable if it's not how they're used to driving.
Many Americans don't know how beneficial roundabouts are.
Not only do roundabouts reduce vehicle collisions by 38%, they are also cheaper to construct, reduce congestion, and are better for the environment.
So this is going to sound like a total conspiracy theorist here, and don't hold me, like, this isn't factual to a degree, but if you think about it, I worked in a law firm where we handled a lot of car accidents, and people got a lot of money from those, even for small injuries, something where you couldn't quite prove what was wrong, like soft tissue injuries, like the whole ow, my neck, my back thing, even though there was nothing that would show up on an MRI or an X-ray. And how many lawyers make their living off of these kinds of accidents? How many judges have started off as lawyers who make a lot of money dealing with those types of accidents? I mean, there's literally an industry behind people getting hurt and suing each other over in the States, which sounds so bizarre when I try to explain it to Aussies. Just how many of these cases are out there. If you got rid of, what was it? I think 38% fewer accidents that happened at traffic lights, and lawyers would be losing money left, right, and center. Law firms would be closing in a lot of places in a lot of major cities across the states because there simply wouldn't be enough of these personal injury cases to keep these personal injury firms afloat. So I'm definitely not saying that like personal injury lawyers and judges are the reason that roundabouts don't exist. Please do not confuse me. Like, don't get me wrong, not what I'm saying whatsoever, but there is an actual industry behind people getting hurt in traffic accidents over in the States. But there's a lot of reasons, it seems, why roundabouts were never really quite popular, but obviously not a reason, not a theory, just a little extra side note that doesn't seem like it's going to be mentioned in this because there's only less than 2 minutes left. There's an entire industry built around people getting hurt in car accidents, suing each other, and then people making money off of it, particularly the lawyers, because where I was from in the States, they took 40% of whatever you won. So if you won $10,000, they were taking $4,000 of that, and then they had to pay the doctors, they had to pay for physio, they had to pay for your ER bills, and then whatever was left over, you got. So chances are in a lot of those types of cases, the lawyers walked away with more money than their clients.
Roundabouts save about $5,000 to $10,000 per year due to the reduced maintenance and electrical cost. They also improve traffic flow. Cars do not have to stop and wait for the light to change. One study of 3 locations in New Hampshire, New York, and Washington found an 89% average reduction in vehicle delays and a 56% average reduction in vehicle stops in areas where roundabouts replace intersections. Another study in Kansas, across 11 intersections, found similar results, with a 65% reduction in delays and a 52% decrease in traffic stops. Because of the reduction in traffic delays and stops, roundabouts have a relatively non-existent carbon footprint. One study in Sweden found an average reduction in carbon emissions by 29% and a reduction in fuel consumption by 28%.
Fortunately, it is proven that more and more Americans are coming around to accepting and using roundabouts.
Studies show that once drivers learn how to use them, their attitude towards roundabouts drastically changes. Community surveys where roundabouts were built shows that only 30% of people approved of them before construction, but approval increased to about 50 to 70% after they were built. So, while modern roundabouts may not be widely popular in the US, Americans are slowly coming back around to the idea of them.
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to be adopting a ton of roundabouts, especially in some of the more major cities. We might see them in some of the smaller areas where there's a little bit more room to make these roundabouts. But if you're talking some of the older cities, some places that have a little bit more congestion to them, where the roads are a lot narrower, I don't see roundabouts ever becoming a thing in a lot of places over in the States, at least when it comes to really, really large metropolitan areas. I could see this becoming more popular in the suburbs or some more rural areas, but I don't think this is really going to catch on in a lot of major cities over in the US. So that's it for this video, guys. Learning a little bit more about roundabouts and why they're just not popular over in the US. So I hope you guys like this video. As always, I will link the original down below, so go check it out over there as well. Give it a big thumbs up, which we are going to do right now for watching this video. If you guys like this video, hit the like and subscribe button as well. It really does help support me. It helps support this channel, and it's amazing to see this little Amer-Australian family here on YouTube growing and growing. So thank you guys so much for your support, and I will see you in my next video.